that the most important thing today is for Americans and Russians to meet and to have their faces to each other rather than their backs. Well, I think that it would be very important to publicize what we will be discussing in the media, to talk about it in the United States and in Russia, and to have it in the newspapers and various other media in our two countries. After what we did together with US presidents in Geneva, where we said that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. A lot of things changed, and the response to this globally was enormous. We responded to the insistence, to the demand of the people that the nuclear arms race should end.
Это подтвердилось той жизнью, которую мы уже прожили после Женевы.
And what happened afterward confirmed the importance of what happened during our first summit in Geneva.
Ну тогда было не так просто все.
But this was not an easy beginning.
И сейчас не просто.
And the situation is difficult now too.
Американцы везде добавляют в своих заявлениях, где мы с ними тогда обсуждали, принимали какие-то соглашения, что они решительно противники, что кто-то, большую имеет вооруженность, кто-то обгоняет их и так далее.
Whenever we
Но
discussed,
когда я заявил, а потом мы стали действовать и начали класс за классом уничтожать, реально уничтожать, изменилось отношение сильно и у американцев.
whenever we discussed arms control with American leaders, they always insisted that they would not accept any other nation's superiority, military superiority over the United States. But then we started the process of mutually reducing nuclear weapons, and things really began to change.
И вот опять наступило время, как оно появилось, откуда,
But
что
now
происходит.
we see that very different things are happening. Why is that happening? What is happening?
Опять гонка вооружений.
Once again, an arms race.
По ветру ушло доверие, которое возникло между Америкой и Россией.
The trust that emerged between America and Russia is collapsing, has collapsed.
А было оно тогда такие, когда мы могли встречались, например, да любую взять.
And I do remember the times when it was very different.
Это было очень доверенные разговоры.
We developed a relationship of trust. We were able to discuss very openly everything with American leaders.
Они видели, что за этими разговорами не пропадает то, о чем договорились.
And the important thing is that our partners and also people saw that it was not just talk, that the process of stopping the arms race and then reducing the arsenals of nuclear weapons actually started.
Вырисовывалась картина очень большой дружбы.
We saw the prospect ultimately of friendship between our countries.
И вдруг
And then
в Америке приходят люди, которые считают, что
we saw that US leaders
Советский Союз ослаблен,
began to talk about the Soviet Union Russia being so weak,
пришел момент,
so weakened,
за который американцы тысячи и тысячи желаний всяких отдавали.
That America should take advantage of this, that the wish of U.S. leaders has been granted, and now it's time to take advantage.
Сначала у нас была такой взятая оценка, что это временное какое-то отступление.
Initially, we thought that this was a temporary thing, that it was just the departure from the relationship of trust.
Я не хочу все говорить.
I don't want to say too much.
Чтобы я все сказал, вы еще должны раз приехать.
If I were to say all I would like to say, that would mean you would have to come back
А я еще жив должен.
and spend a lot of time with me, and I would need to be alive when you come back.
But say as much as you can.
Но говорите все, что вы хотите сказать,
We want
Михаил
to hear.
Сергеевич. Мы хотим это услышать. Говорите все, что вы хотите сказать.
Утвердили.
Approved. Okay.
Wonderful.
Да. Так вот, интересно, как развивалось. Это надо иметь в виду. Не становиться рабами собственных наших ошибок.
So when I am saying all this, I think it's important to know how this whole thing developed. We should not be prisoners, hostages to our mistakes, to our blunders.
Женевский дух, Женевский дух.
The spirit of Geneva, the spirit of our first summit.
Пришла весна следующего года, и вдруг
But then, in the spring of 1986,
на нашей территории
we saw in our territorial waters
появились американские корабли.
U.S. Navy ships.
Все попытки их покинуть территорию
And all our requests for them to leave our territorial waters
ничего не давали.
were in vain.
Наверное, шла проверка наших нервов.
They were probably testing our nerves. And this was reported to me. This situation was reported to me.
Я очень был большой сторонник сотрудничества с Америкой.
I was always
Американцы очень симпатичны
in favor
как
of
народ.
cooperation with the United States.
И это остается
I always
так.
liked Americans, the American people, and I still do.
Да. Я сказал, примите крутые меры.
But I said, please
Все, что в пределах закона, мы уже использовали.
do whatever is necessary to get them out.
Что вы предлагаете? Надо применить силу.
So they said that we've done everything imaginable.
Я думаю, даже кто-то подталкивал руководство, потому что это была причина, чтобы ответить на это.
And now something else needs to be done. I think that some people were pushing it.
И тем не менее я сказал, будучи верховным главкомандующим,
But I, as commander-in-chief, had to take a decision.
дайте предупредительные, серьезные, огневые.
And I said, you should make warning shots, and it should be very convincing, very compelling.
Через полчаса их не...
And this was done, and half an hour later, the ships withdrew from our territorial waters.
И опять, как говорится, мы начали жить, как жить.
And we were able to continue our relationship.
Но
I received a letter from President Reagan and a draft reply to that letter.
я тогда прихожу к мнению, что дальнейший процесс весь упирается в то, что не принимаются меры практического порядка по реализации наших договоренностей.
And so I concluded that the negotiations were deadlocked and that the negotiations are not going anywhere.
Я посоветовался самыми важными персонами у нас в Политбюро.
And so I consulted the key members of the Politburo.
Я сказал, что так нельзя вести дела, надо, видимо,
And I said to
все
them,
поправлять на уровне,
this
самом
is
высшем
not the
уровне.
way to proceed, and that we need a new summit in order to correct the situation.
Политбюро поддержало меня.
And the Politburo supported me.
Я поставил вопрос так, что все доводы о том, что дела идут плохо в нас в сотрудничестве, я принимаю, что они правы, справедливы. Надо думать, как действовать.
So I said that it's not enough.
Выходит, без участия президентов дело не видишь, на месте топчется.
And so I said it's not enough to just state that the negotiations are going nowhere. It's up to the two leaders, to the two presidents, to take things in hand. And so I proposed to President Reagan that we meet as soon as possible in order to consider the situation and our subsequent action. And I suggested a couple of venues for that meeting. And very quickly, I received a response from the President. I think that was an excellent example of how to react to difficult situations.
The
first point was that he agreed to meet as soon as possible. And secondly, that the venue would be Reykjavik. So that was agreed. But anyway, 3 days after my first letter to President Reagan, we received that reply from him agreeing to the meeting, and we began to prepare for the Reykjavik summit. And the Reykjavik meeting became a real summit. I think it was. It still hasn't been surpassed. Its importance has not been surpassed.
Мы договорились, вернее, внесли предложение в Рейкьявик. Такое предложение. Берем триаду.
The proposal that we made in Reykjavik was simple.
Ядерные силы воздуха, авиация.
We proposed to cut the entire triad of nuclear weapons by one half. The land-based, air-based, and submarine-launched missiles would all be cut in half. We stated that since there is rough equality now, let us have rough equality, but at a much lower level, just one half.
Неожиданно они были готовы. Значит, их тоже мучило это.
And to our surprise, they were ready to work on that basis.
Последовал Рейкьявик. Там была такая работа, день и ночь, день и ночь.
So Reykjavik also meant a lot of work. Our teams worked day and night.
Связи с Москвой.
Day and night. We were in constant communication with Moscow and with Washington in order to adjust our positions. So without going into all details, I'll just say that we were able to agree on just about every point. Practically. But one. When everything was ready, I said to the President, but we must also discuss ballistic missile defense, the SDI. And this is where we stumbled. Our views, our positions were totally different on this one item. And when I remember it, I still get emotional.
президент, согласитесь, я обещаю вам пойти на решение всех вопросов, которые существуют.
President Reagan said that if you agree to our continuing the testing of SDI, I will meet you halfway on all the other issues.
Хорошо, давайте запишем, чтобы свой специальный пункт.
So I agreed that on this we must have a special understanding.
Нельзя допустить, чтобы из-за сои гонка вооружений была в воздух перенесена.
I said that one thing we cannot have is a new arms race in outer space.
Сколько лет потребовалось для того, чтобы мы на Земле договорились о том, как?
I said that it took us so many years to reach an agreement on arms control and verification here on Earth.
Нет.
So why do we go to space with an arms race?
Заявил он, я вижу, вы и приехали для того, чтобы меня в такое положение поставить.
So Reagan regarded our position as a kind of trap, and he actually said that. You came here in order to put me in this position, to put me into this trap.
Он так был с Теллером связан.
I thought that it was the influence
заколдовал его.
Of Dr. Teller, who was the initiator of that whole strategic defense initiative.
Я сказал, давайте сейчас вернемся, если вы считаете, что сядем за стол, у нас все готово, подпишем.
And I said, Mr. President, I am ready to sign all of our agreements, all of our understanding. Let's go back to the table and sign it.
Коротким. Нет.
But he said no, unless he gets a green light on SDI.
Ну, я не могу поддержать вас в этом.
I said I cannot give you a green light.
Ответ его тоже еще короче был. Сожалею.
And to that he said just, I'm sorry.
Готовый продукт, принятый всеми.
So we had a product, arms reductions, the main parameters were agreed, but we could not close the deal.
И пошла пропаганда.
And then there was propaganda, a lot of propaganda.
Американцы прежде всего они покидали, и все заявили здесь, в общем, чтобы быть кратким. Место прорыва, говорят, получился провал.
The American delegation, when it was leaving Reykjavik, made a statement that we failed, that instead of a breakthrough, there was a failure.
Вечером я должен встретиться был с прессой мировой.
I stayed for a few hours in Reykjavik to talk to the media, a press conference.
Я шел пешком туда.
I walked to the venue of that press conference.
Что же делать?
I wanted some time to think it over.
По сути дела, наше руководство предоставило карт-бланш Генсеку.
As a general secretary, I had permission from our government, from the Soviet government, to give the evaluation of what happened.
Я пришел, 1000 человек в зале.
It was a huge hall where about 1,000 journalists gathered.
Зашел я в зал, тишина, мертвая тишина.
When I entered that hall, I saw that everyone was waiting in dead silence.
Еще кадры для кинофильма.
Like in a movie.
Да. Ничего не получилось.
And I felt that indeed there had been a failure.
Утром в Вашингтоне Узнали, что Горбачев выступил против провала.
But then I said that it was not a failure, and the next morning they learned in Washington that I evaluated Reykjavik as enormous progress, that I said that we should follow up on that progress and continue down that road of reducing nuclear weapons.
Лидеры Америки, вернувшись в Америку, уже заявили, что провал.
But on the other hand, the U.S. leaders, the U.S. delegation, had characterized Reykjavik as a failure. Reykjavik accomplished a great deal, and we had to follow up.
И в себя дома уже обсуждая, надо было не сорваться с оценками и обращаться как партнерам, серьезным партнерам.
And when I got back to Moscow and discussed it with other Soviet leaders, we all agreed that we should build on what happened instead of destroying the accomplishments of Reykjavik, to regard this as our common achievement, as common progress, and to move on.
Ну, там отделили ракеты от стратегических.
So, as a result of this, we agreed to single out INF missiles
Средние ракеты.
And to have a separate agreement on intermediate and shorter range missiles.
И дальше продолжалось вот на этой основе, которая позволила в конце концов прийти к соглашениям, которые обеспечили нам. Это уже мы сделали, и вы, и мы.
And then building on all of that, we reached agreements. First the INF Treaty, and then the START Treaty, and all the other agreements that have by now resulted in the elimination of 85% of the nuclear weapons, of the nuclear arsenals of the Cold War. So never lose hope, never panic if things are difficult.
Особенно если за твоей спиной огромные страны,
particularly
на которых лежит особая ответственность
when you represent
перед своими народами,
great nations, the two great powers that are responsible not only to their people, but also to the world. This was our principle. This was our guideline. And this is what we insisted on.
Осталось столько боезарядов.
It is true, however, that even after the 85% of former nuclear weapons have been destroyed, we still have enough nuclear weapons to destroy or to undermine the human civilization.
И сейчас все то, что дал Рейкьявик, должно быть использовано.
So even today, we need to continue building on what we achieved in Reykjavik and afterwards. We should not retreat from that goal.
Как же сейчас получается?
The question is, what's happening now?
Плохо.
How is it that things are so bad?
Все как бы замерло.
It's bad. Everything seems frozen.
И подстегнуло гонку.
And the arms race has resumed.
Это главный вопрос. И для наших стран.
And this is now the number one issue for our two countries. It's their responsibility.
И перед своими народами.
And as I said, responsibility to their people, to their nations,
и перед всем миром.
But also to the world. For me, The main thing is I'm very happy that we've met.
Давайте все делать опять, как делали.
And that I've been able to tell you that we should persist.
Перестройка 2.
We should persist. We should have perestroika, a new perestroika, a second perestroika.
Которые будут сотрудничать с Америкой.
Russia is currently led by people who are ready to cooperate, to work together with the United
Все
States.
поколения, с которыми мне пришлось жить, и в молодости, и потом уже, будучи генсеком, никогда никому в голову не приходило воевать с Америкой.
Every generation of Russian people with which I have had to deal during my long life, starting from the post-war period and subsequently, never ever do Russians want to fight America.
Пока еще не поздно выходить на новый путь с учетом наших выводов.
I think it is still not too late. It is still not too late to act, building on taking into account the lessons of the past.
Я думаю,
For that.
нужно не только участие ответственной политики со стороны государств.
I think that the responsibility is not just the responsibility of governments, of leaders, it's also the responsibility of civil societies here in this country and in the United States, that all those civil society organizations can contribute.
По Конституции это нас касается всех.
And I think according to your constitution and to our constitution, it's we the people.
Есть люди, которые наживаются на этих проблемах.
I think that there are people that get rich on the problems that we are having in our relationship. I think there are some people who make money on that, both in the United States and in our country.
Нельзя им отдавать власть.
We cannot allow them to rule. We should be together. Our two nations should work together. Our two nations should not give up. We should heal our relationship.